Hi, I'm Jason Klaus, and this is a very special edition of Klaus to the Heart on YouTube.com. What you are about to watch is something that was some time in the making. It's also going to be one of the most real, one of the most revealing, and one of the most emotional and honest conversations that I've ever had since launching this project over a year ago. We all have people in our lives where we garner some sort of emotion, some sort of a reaction just based solely every time we hear their name. Generally, it's either one that's met with admiration or one with disdain. In the case of my guest on this episode, it could be one or the other, all based on in what capacity you know this individual. Outspoken, controversial, but one that has never shied away from telling you what's on his mind. On this episode, I sit down and have a very in-depth, a very personal conversation with Scott Ryan. And for those of you who may not know that name, you may know him better as his professional wrestling alter ego of Scotty Fraytown. In here, Scott pulls no punches, and we discuss a number of topics that has been linked to controversy in terms of him and his time with the Michigan Wrestling Organization. It is the first time that he and I had actually sit down and actually seen each other in quite some time, and especially to tackle these issues. It does get real and it is adult oriented, but it is a conversation that I think can lead to a lot of good. A road to redemption in some cases. So thank you for taking time out of your day to watch this episode. And my conversation with Scott Ryan begins right now. And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to what's going to be probably one of the most talked about episodes since we've opened up the Klaus to the Heart umbrella. Joining me is the one and only Scott Ryan, and we are, full disclosure right out of the gate. This has not been rehearsed. This is as real as it gets. Yep. I do not have any notes whatsoever. This is what you call reality TV in its purest form. Also, I should mention that we are recording this on a Sunday, which is why Mr. Ryan is dressed in the garb that he's in.
Oh, yes. It's football Sunday, baby. That's what it is.
Scott, this has been a long time coming.
Yep, it has.
There is a lot of rumor. There's a lot of innuendo. There is a lot of controversy, especially in terms of the dynamic between the relationship between you and me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I should be honest right out of the gate. You and I have had conversations prior to us doing this.
Absolutely.
To the point to where we're on one page. There's no real animosity in terms of I hate you and you hate me.
Right.
So we have had some sort of communication prior to us actually, just kind of laying our cards out on the table. Would you say that's accurate?
Absolutely. We've talked. We didn't talk for what, a year? It was a year. and that sucked. Honestly, that was miserable because at that when I had left the MWO, I consider you one of my closest friends. You were one of the best friends I had. And it really sucked. It was just a miserable experience.
Okay, before we get to that point, let's bring everybody up to speed as to where our stories kind of cross paths. You initially came here to the MWO.
Yep.
Pronouns, pal. You came in, what was it, 2012? 2011, something like that?
Yeah, it was about 2011. I was still wrestling for the BCWA at that time. They closed down. I believe it was 2011. So it was right before they were shutting doors that I swung over your way, and I was working for both promotions.
Mm-hmm. Kind of talk me through how we came on your radar, how that whole thing kind of worked out.
Well, at that time, so I had been trained by a guy, Judas Coltrane, back in, God, it was 2008, I think. And it was me and Verdi, who's now known as, the Dread King Logan. I mean, he's been so many different versions of Logan. I joke with him, he got Logan Roku and Dark Star and Ham Sandwich Logan and all that good stuff. And I always joke with him about that. But he was up with you guys already. He was teaming with Levi Blue. And I was trained by Judas Coltrane initially, but Levi said, "Hey, well, why don't you come up to the MWO and come talk to me?" And the reality is when you get trained in this business, a name is everything. Right. That's what you're paying for ultimately. Yeah, you can go through all the bumps and whatever. I've seen guys that have no name, look better than some guys that were pro trained. The reality is that you're paying for that name. That's what you pay for. So Levi said, "Well, Coltrane's name doesn't carry as much weight as mine," and it's true. It's especially in the state of Michigan. He said, "Why don't you come up and talk to me and come up to MWO and work for Jason, and we'll take a look at you and see where we go." And so I said, "Okay." So I came up and I started wrestling for the MWO, and Levi grabbed a hold of me and he basically in a way retrained me. And eventually said, "You can use my name anytime." And I said, "Okay." And he became my trainer from that point forth. So I've been up there for a while, and then I continued wrestling for you guys for a while. I think it was about 3 years. I was there. I kept coming, and then I had left for a little while, and then I had come back, and then after I came back, I had been there till, was it the end of 2018? I want to say. So I stuck around to the end of 2018, and then hit the Indies after that. And I've been out on the Indies and just kind of wrestling out there ever since. So yeah, it's been a long adventure leading to today.
Going back to what you had said, about Levi inviting you up and being able to utilize his name. For those who are watching that are not involved in the wrestling business, especially on an independent level, alluding to what Scott had just said is, if you want to be deemed credible, you got to have credible training. And like he said, a name will make or break you.
Right.
That's just it's a fraternity. It's a totally different animal than any other organized sport or entertainment genre, right?
Especially in this state.
Really. So yeah, I mean, we could spend hours talking about all of that, but the fact that Levi, thought enough of you to put his name on you like that, knowing him the way that I do on a personal level as well as a professional one, obviously he did that because he thinks enough of you, and that, because he's not a guy that just throws his name on anybody,
right.
Because I have seen and I have heard these cases where people have done that without his endorsement, and you see a completely different side of Sean than you would any other day of the week, right?
Sure.
So the fact that he was willing to put his name on you, that says a lot right there. So you had your first stint here, lasted a handful of years. You went off and did the indie thing and different promotions and things like that. Now, when you embarked on that part of your career, what was your biggest takeaway from that?
Well,
in terms of you becoming the superstar, for the lack of a better term, that you want to be.
Well, I did a lot of traveling. It was a lot. I was out of state during that span when I was going out of state. I was in Wisconsin. I hit Chicago. I hit 14 different states in that time frame when I was gone from the MWO. One thing is I'm a dad first, and I've always been a dad first. That never changes. And I was the one thing that kind of told me that, okay, well, maybe I need to tone it back. I was driving to Nebraska with at that time, he was 3, my 3-year-old son in a car seat next to me, and it was just like, this isn't fair to him. I gotta be more localized here. I gotta slow it down a little bit, because when he's on that, I think it was a 14-hour car ride, if not longer. It was like, here we are driving through the night, and he's conked out in his car seat, waiting until we get to the town so we get into a hotel. And right around that moment, it kind of hit me. I got to slow down and focus in on a more localized, centralized thing, something a little further, less far away from home. And I wasn't making a ton of money at the time either. That was a big thing. I had changed jobs, but I wasn't making a buku dollars. No, I wasn't out there making some massive salary or anything like that. When I had left the MWO, I was actually making less money than I was making during the time when I was off. So I had changed jobs several times and made more and more money every time, but at that specific time, it was just like, look, I'm not making that much money, and I got this poor kid sitting in a car seat. I could have been spending my weekend, swimming with the kid, going to the park, doing something. Instead, he's in a car seat, with a little video game in his hand, driving to Nebraska. And it really, I said, no more. I'm going to start doing things that are more in-state and maybe in Ohio, really more toward the Midwest here. But those long car rides, he doesn't come on anymore, and I don't make him come on those anymore. And, unless he wants to, but that was where I kind of pumped the brakes on the long trips. I liked being out on the Indies, especially particular out of state. Out of state was nice. People out of state are fantastic. They're wonderful. To be honest, I'm not a big fan of the Indies in the state of Michigan. Within the state is great when they have good promoters, but it's a rarity these days. The promoters I've noticed a lot of promoters taking advantage of guys and not paying guys properly, or whatever the case may be. In Michigan, the days of here's the hot dog, door's a little short today, are still alive and well in the state of Michigan. I've seen that one too many times. You go out of state, you're getting paid, and you're getting treated right, and they respect your craft. It's a whole different animal from state to state, and then also from being from the MWO to being around the Indies is a completely different animal as well. The wrestling in the MWO, even it's kind of like being out of state. They respect you a lot more for your in-ring work. It gets a lot more recognition than you do in just the Michigan Indies or the Indies in general. You get a lot more recognition for what you do in ring, and I love that about the MWO big time.
You realize, now I want to reiterate, we are shooting from the hip here.
Yeah.
And you do realize that these things that you're saying, Scott, are going to go on the show, and people are going to hear this, and you're going to ruffle feathers.
Life's tough. Get a helmet.
Okay. Well,
it is what it is. And I've been very candid about the and you saw recently, I've been very candid about my overall feelings on the Michigan Indies. At this stage of the game, I'm 33 years old. I'm married. I got 2 kids. Okay, like what am I supposed to be angry about not getting booked in Michigan? Like, what do I care? I don't care. It's the state of Michigan right now. It's hysterical to me. These guys especially particularly on the Indies, a lot of them, and there's some good promoters out there. You being one of them. There's some good promoters out there, but like a lot of these promoters, they act like this place, and a lot of wrestlers recently have agreed with me, but I'm the only one that's been vocal enough to say it. It's funny going to some of these shows, and these guys, they come up to me and they go, "Man, what you said, that was absolutely right." Am I supposed to be upset about, not getting booked in the ring next to the go-kart track where I can play skee ball afterwards? Like, this isn't Madison Square Garden, guys. It really isn't. And that's where a lot of folks, they act like Michigan's like the mecca of indie professional wrestling, and it's not. It's indie wrestling. That's what it is. We're in gyms, and we're in bars, and we're there's outdoor shows, and we're doing festivals and stuff like that. It's not like we're selling out for 50,000 seat arenas here. So I always kind of shrug and giggle a little bit about going out under the Michigan Indies and these guys turning their noses up at people, and like, you're not WWE. You're not paying me 6 figures to be out here. So what do I care? I don't.
To play devil's advocate a little bit, just indulge me here for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
I understand what you're saying, and I know that a lot of people that might watch this just based on the title that I wind up putting on this, they're going to tune in to watch this, and they're hearing this, and some of them may be other promoters. They may be the same people that you are referring to. Mm-hmm. As a promoter, let me just throw this at you. While I can appreciate what you're saying, and I agree with a lot of what you're saying, but as a promoter, maybe this is why we get the flack that we do, because I don't look at things the same way that other promoters, other performers do with their own individual businesses. What they do is their business. But when you are putting together a show, and like for us, it would be one of our super cards.
Right.
Like a WrestleRama or a Christmas Clash or something like this. Yep. When I am building that card, that day, that event, regardless of what the venue is, I try to portray it to our fans and just as importantly to our roster that this is a big deal. Mm-hmm. This is a big show for us. And yeah, we are not in a 50,000 seat, venue. We have to act like, or kind of put ourselves in the mentality that we are, because if we are that much more hyped about it, you're going to be, you will perform better. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I agree with that to that extent. My point is that there's a degree of arrogance almost that goes around with the state of Michigan, where these guys, like, I'm supposed to beg for a spot. Does that make sense? Like, I'm supposed to beg for my position on a card. I'm supposed to go out there and really pucker up and kiss that ass. No, I'm not. I'm a grown man. I'm not. I'm not. I agree that you have to be larger than life, and you have to portray that to the fans, and that's great. But if I'm supposed to, for example, there's a show recently out here on the Indies that started adding dates randomly, didn't ask anybody or anything like that, and got mad that people were like, well, I can't make those dates. I have other shows. Well, no.
I see what you're saying. So the level of arrogance that you're referring to is, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but the way that I'm hearing it is there's a fine line between what we do in the show or in a show environment and how we conduct ourselves behind the curtain. Is that what you're referring to?
Right. Right. From a business perspective, that's not how you do business. And these a lot of these promoters in Michigan, in particular on the Michigan Indies right now, they go they treat you like you're less than, like you're a racehorse, you know, and that's it. You're a racehorse. When they're done with you, they blow your brains out.
I've heard that analogy a lot.
You know, that's what it is, and that's the state of Michigan right now as far as the Indies go. You go out of state, you don't get treated like that. That's why a lot of the guys in this state, and then I did a show a couple weeks ago. It was a good time, but I ran into a couple of guys, and they said, "Yeah, I'm wrestling out of state. I'm not going in. I'm not going in Michigan. I'm wrestling out of state." This place, they act. There's a high and mighty type of attitude when it comes to the Michigan indie wrestling scene, and it's not something that I like being a part of. That's why I've been wrestling out of state. I've been wrestling in Ohio, mostly. That's where I've been kind of, you know, getting out there. I have one show in Michigan that I've been wrestling for, and that's it.
Do you think? Well, I want to ask this question, and then we'll move forward a little bit, because I don't want this to sound like you came on the show to just bash the entire state's promotional
right.
structure, because that certainly was not the case here. You just kind of got up on a little tangent.
Went down that rabbit hole.
Well, right. Listen, so this perception that you have described, at least from your personal way that you look at things and the feedback that you've gotten in various locker rooms from other workers, do you think that this perception that you are feeling, do you think that has been, for the lack of better terms, tagged on the state of Michigan in terms of the wrestling scene, and that's why you're not seeing as many Michigan-based, people become a more well-known, performer, a superstar? Why they're not landing these deals with other promoters?
There's been guys that are going everywhere that are making their way to, like, there's been like a lot of guys that have left state. If you look at where the success goes, where these guys go for their success, we've had a lot of guys go to Florida in this state. We've had a lot of guys go to the Northeast, and go up toward New York and Pennsylvania and all those different places. People are leaving this state and having far more success out of this state. And I don't know if it's been tagged on the state of Michigan per se, because there's some good wrestlers up here. There's some good workers. It's not like they're bad workers. I think a lot of people recognize that, wow, there's some good wrestlers up there. But I do think that if you're going to attain any success, to me, you're going to wind up leaving the state of Michigan. That's where all the success is out of this state. There's like Truth Martini, for example, is a good trainer. He's a very, very good trainer. Clearly he's good. He's working for Ring of Honor, if I'm not mistaken. I think he's still working there. But Ring of Honor is out of state. all this stuff is out of state. So that's where you're seeing all the success is guys leaving town. And I don't know if there's a tag on Michigan. I don't know if there's a feeling on up top about Michigan and WWE or whatever the case may be. I don't know, but I can tell you that all the success from these guys that are in this state, their success is out of state right now.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, so I don't even really know. Like I said, I didn't write any notes down, so I don't even know how to make the transition to what we're about to talk about.
Sure.
So we're just gonna, dive right into it. Let's go back to 2018.
Sure.
And at the time. And, I'll give you my perspective on things. You can tell me what you were thinking, what you were seeing, what you were feeling, and we'll just, try to come to the happy medium if there is such a thing. 2018, when I think about that year, from a performance standpoint, from a performance standpoint, I guess is the better term. That's the Basher Fraytown feud.
Yeah.
And that was something that you had actually, pitched to me several times over the course of your time in the organization before it finally, came about. And
Right.
we made the decision to turn your character heel, which we weren't sure if it would fly because you were so popular with our fan base. The pink and black, the tassels, the top rope moves. I mean, the Flatliner Scotty Fraytown gimmick was over. There is no denying that. You have made no bones about the fact that you want to be the face of the company.
Right.
You wanted to be the MWO champion. We had had you like a focal point on the Great Lakes title, which is still a very prestigious championship and not one that we just throw on just anybody.
Right.
And in a lot of ways, I had credited, and anybody will tell you this, that I talked to about this, I credited you with adding a level of prestige to that title. Now, I understand the fact that titles are gimmicks and things of this nature, but with us, it's not just handed to somebody just for the sake of handing it to them. They earn it.
Right.
That title means something. It meant something to the previous title holders, and it means something to the ones who aspired to wear that belt.
Sure.
At what point, Scott? I mean, because frustration for you started to come into play.
Yeah.
I mean, it was clearly obvious. That's not to say that you and I didn't do good business, because our rivalry, it captivated our fan base. Because you finally saw something new. You and I had not worked in the ring at the same time unless it was a random, like a tag team match for a Tricker Slam, or we happened to be in the ring at the same time at a bunkhouse brawl or a battle royal. There had never been a one-on-one opportunity with the both of us.
Right.
So we get to a point to where this is what's going to happen. But I could also tell that frustration was starting to become a thing. So talk me through what you were feeling, what you were thinking about, because I feel like that with the conflict that ensued, it can be traced back to that point, if not further, for something that I may not have picked up on or been aware of.
Well, so I felt like 2017, 2018, during that 2-year span, that was some of the best work I'd ever done. I was ecstatic about that. And a lot, like from a performance perspective, I felt great. I was getting the proper recognition, at least at that time. I felt like you guys were looking at me and saying, wow, look at him go. And I was putting on some of the best matches that I had ever done, and giving some of the best promos, and I was doing what I needed to do. I was really proud of that. So from a work perspective, there was no frustration there. Absolutely none. I felt like I was where I needed to be. You guys were setting me up where I needed to go, and I felt good about that. A lot of my frustrations simply came from backstage stuff, and I'll call it backstage bullshit. Is the most common word you can use to describe it. It was from certain things that I still don't understand, to certain things that I didn't feel were right, things that were said. And a lot of this just boils down to nothing more than a lack of communication. A lack of communication or miscommunicating things. That's what it comes down to. A bunch of grown men not willing to talk and talk to each other like adults. But from a wrestling perspective, happier than a pig in shit. Honestly, I felt great. Everything was good. The backstage stuff is where my frustrations began to boil over, because I didn't like the backstage drama that was happening in that period of time. Whether it be with Cody Leedy, whether it be with John Campbell, whether it be with Todd Gilbert, whether it be with Bill Sackman, it was just nonsense at a certain point. And at a certain point, Cody was a part of your booking committee, and eventually I started feeling like I was being targeted at one point, during that situation with Cody that took place. So, but from a performance perspective, I felt great. I thought our feud was going well. I thought that the feud with the Dean boys went well. The feud with Bam Grizzly went well. All fun guys to work with. Had a great time. I worked with JJ Hughes, great worker, great time. I like him a lot. I enjoyed myself. I was enjoying myself in the ring is where I was having a good time. But backstage, not so much.
So I mean, the lack of communication, I can understand, because you and I went through it, so yeah. I could understand that. But let me just say, well, I mean, you and I have talked about this as far as the controversies or what have you with Cody and his position backstage, and I told you this, back then when you had brought it up, that the personal issues were not influencing what we were doing on the show, because you and I were still,
right.
we were still working together. And if that had been the case, we all know that the most dangerous weapon in professional wrestling is the eraser, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, it could have been very easy to say, okay, he is ruffling feathers. We don't want to deal with this, so we're going to take him out of this rivalry and things of this nature, and have him do something, for the lack of a better term, less meaningful. That obviously did not happen. Scott, you and I talked a lot about this, back then, and a little bit while we were kind of rebuilding our relationship here, and that is, perception is so key to any kind of conversation. Now, sure. I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt that the Scott Ryan that I am talking to here and now is not the same man that I talked to and dealt with on a business level like 2.5 years ago.
Right.
Okay. So would you agree, and maybe you wouldn't, but would you say that a lot of the lack of communication may have been how people were perceiving you based on how you presented yourself in the situation, or do you think I'm totally off my rocker here?
In a way, yeah. So I handled things. We had a couple situations that went on, and I handled things poorly. I'll straight up say that. I'll own that. I handled things poorly. I would, hear what was going on or find out what was going on. I discover a situation, and it was just, I'd go up to somebody and start yelling at them or getting nasty with them, or make some sort of nasty comment toward them, or whatever the case may be. And to me, I look back on it, and hindsight is always 20/20. I always look back on it and I say, what the hell are you thinking, Scott? You couldn't just walk up to the person and had an adult conversation. And to be fair, I've also tried to have those conversations with folks, and they didn't want to have a conversation. I can, you can lead a horse to water, you can't make it drink.
Mm-hmm.
That's where it was. I don't know how deeply you'd like me to dive into this here, but John Campbell, that was the most common. Like, I look back on it, and that's where a lot in that stupid Tatanka thing that I still don't understand to this day. I don't. So to give some background to this, because this has got it's part of the reason that things went on. I was watching King of the Ring from 1993. I was watching this show, and Tatanka came out to the ring. It's one of my favorite wrestlers growing up. Loved watching him. Native American guy. I wrestled him. Has it been 2 years already? I wrestled him a while back. He's a great guy. And I was super excited watching him. Fans were hot, fired up. And I said, man, I really like this character. I like this wrestler. He's all full of fire. This is great. And I had posted something on our roster page saying that I would like to see more characters like this because it was exciting and it was fun to watch and fans were behind it and it's great. And apparently I had offended Cody Leedy. I didn't even know Cody was, Native American in any way, shape, or form. A lot of people, I don't think anybody knew. But for the longest time, I think everybody thought he was Hispanic. But apparently he was offended by this. To this day, I seriously and genuinely don't know why. Like, I don't know why he was offended. I don't know why he was upset. I don't know why it bothered him. I literally don't know. And I've never gotten to have that conversation with Cody. I apologized to him afterwards for upsetting him, but I don't know why he was upset. I just don't. I seriously don't. I to this day, it's been 2 years. I'm at a loss. I still don't understand. And because of this, apparently they decided that the Tatanka character and gimmick was considered racist in some way, shape, or form. Cody, Bill, and Todd, and they were running around backstage and messaging people, and I had several people approach me going, why are Bill and Todd and Cody running around backstage calling you a racist? And I kind of pieced it all together and realized they were referring to this Tatanka situation. And I approached all three of them. Now, this is on me because I came at them mean. I was not nice about it. That's a hell of an accusation to make of people, to be running around saying that type of thing. So I approached them and I said what I had to say, and it wasn't it wasn't kind, it wasn't well put, it wasn't a man-to-man conversation. It was me getting in your face, and I handled that extremely poorly. But after I had approached them and dealt with it, I was getting ready, and this is where the thing with John comes in. I was getting ready to train. We had been leading kind of your training and brush up classes with a lot of the guys that wanted to roll around in the ring and get to work and whatever the case may be. And I had asked John, and he was acting weird, and I had asked him if he wanted to start getting the guys rolling on drills and things like that. And he said, no, I'm going to sit this one out. And he looked kind of upset. And I said, are you okay? Is everything good? And he looked at me and said, I really don't like the way that you approached Todd and Bill and Cody. And I said, oh, well, okay. Well, here, let's go talk about it real quick, and get this out of the way. You and I can. We'll go talk about it, and then we can jump back in and, get to work. And he got out of the ring, and he right in front of all the young guys and all the boys, he said, and here's the exact quote: "I don't want to fucking talk to you." And he walked away. And it was in front of everybody, and I was just kind of standing in the ring like, well, okay. So I continued doing drills with the guys that day on my own. And then John and I didn't talk for, God, it was 2.5 months, I think. We didn't talk, 3 months. But that day I had been wrestling for John's promotion IWE up in Houghton Lake. And it was that day I decided I don't want to work there anymore. And because I'm not going to work for a promoter that's going to treat me like that, that's going to act like that. I tried to have a conversation with him, a private and professional conversation, and he didn't want to have it. Now, did I approach Cody and Todd and Bill, the way I should have? Probably not. I know I was really harsh in those conversations, and it wasn't okay. And I own that. And you guys watching, I do apologize for that, and I'd love to apologize to your faces. But John wasn't involved. John wasn't involved. He had nothing to do with that situation at all. And right then and there, I decided that day, I messaged his business partner, Dennis, and I said, I'm not working for you anymore. I don't want to be there. I'm leaving. And that's where I kind of severed that relationship with the IWE. I didn't want to be there, and I didn't want to work for somebody that was going to do that. John and I would later talk about this situation, or sort of, in a way. Apparently, because we hadn't talked, he finally said, well, can we talk? And I said, well, sure. And we went outside and we had a conversation. And his exact words were, are we okay? And I said, well, yeah, we're okay. And I go, why? And he goes, well, I feel like you're mad at me. And I said, well, no. And John and I talked, and there were never any apologies exchanged in that situation. I don't think John acted appropriately in that situation. I'd be lying if I told you otherwise. Did I act appropriately with Cody and Bill and Todd? No. But John did not act as a professional, and he didn't act appropriately. He wasn't involved. He had no business getting involved. And I was, to this day, it was like, huh? And I guess we were kind of cool after that. He had said, and that's one of the things that it kind of opened the door to this thing, is actually something he said during that conversation. And I had been thinking about it, and the bridges are never completely burned. They're only down for construction, was something that he said to me during that conversation. And I was sitting there later on, and it's one of the reasons I'm on here with you, is that whether or not I ever return to the MWO is irrelevant to me. That's irrelevant. I would love to come back there. I never wanted to leave, but I'm done being a 33-year-old man with heat or anger or hostility towards somebody else over a business where guys go out and play fight in their underwear. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm done with it. I'm old enough. I'm mature enough. I can own what I've done. I can own it all day long. But now we gotta open those channels of communication, and we gotta rebuild those bridges, and we gotta start being adults. I'd rather not have that heat. I'd rather not have that hostility. I'd rather not have things being said about me. I'd rather not have, as you said, rumor and innuendo flying around about every single situation under the sun.
Right.
I've heard a lot of rumors. I've heard a lot of speculation. I've heard a lot of everything. A lot of stuff that people have assumed or they just rolled with it. Oh, this happened. And it was, well, who'd you hear that from? The old saying is telephone, tell a friend, tell a wrestler. Yeah, we get a lot of that. And in this situation, there's been a lot of that. But that was where and that whole situation is where my frustration truly started in the MWO, as far as a backstage situation was going on.
So, man, that's a lot of, I mean, a lot of the detail and stuff like that. I just heard for the first time, so I'm trying to process everything as you were saying, and I was like, damn, man, this was a lot more multiple layered than I knew about at the time. You
Right.
know, based on what I knew, I'm like, this is ridiculous. There's no reason why it has to escalate to this, because I've always been a proponent that a lot of issues can be resolved with communication. You know,
Mm.
and as you have said on here, the way that you handled Cody, Bill, and Todd was not ideal.
No.
Um, and I'm certainly not going to speculate on what other people were feeling or thinking at that time, because that wouldn't be fair, you know, because
Right.
everybody deals with their situations individually, you know. And I, knowing John the way that I do, you know, I can understand why he was upset, because, you know, a few people that he cares about a great deal may have felt attacked, and he got wind of it, in however way that he did. So knowing him the way that I do, you know, and that's not to crucify or to justify anything. I'm just, this is just the way that I see it, you
Oh
know.
yeah.
So okay, so that's where the conflict kind of triggered from.
Right.
Okay, being, you know, labeled or called a racist. I mean, even, you know, 2 years ago wouldn't have. I mean, it was, you know, to be called a racist is bad. There's no doubt about that.
Absolutely.
But I mean, I can't imagine what it would have been like if it happened in this year,
Oh
because
yeah.
I mean, the focus of that word and that whole genre is intensified 100-fold at this point. We've all seen it in the news. Now, in the conversations that you and I have had, you have made no bones about the fact that ultimately you would like one day for it to be possible for you to come back to the MWO. Is that accurate?
Sure.
Okay. So, you know, and let me say that, you know, before anything like that could ever be talked about, and you and I have talked about this in the past, is, you know, we got to find a way to get past all of this on this drama, the controversy, I guess, is a better word. And they do say that time heals all wounds. It's just how many, you know, how much time has to elapse, and that's individualized.
Right.
That, you know, what happens after this? I mean, you're coming back to MWO is not going to happen tomorrow.
No.
Is my point. You know, this is simply to give you the platform to air out your side of the issues, and to kind of put your 2 cents in on things that you may have heard that are misunderstood.
Right. Misunderstood. There's a lot of speculation. I've heard things thrown around about this situation that I people that aren't involved in it, they don't even know or realize. I've heard guys that are just now, you know, becoming a part of the MWO, that are just now becoming, they are putting their 2 cents on it, like they know what's going on.
Right.
And I've kind of looked at one of, and I forget his name. It was one of your announcers had said something like about me, and I had seen the comment, and it's like, God, you weren't even there. You know, you weren't even involved. You were a fan at the time. You know, like, do you actually know what went on, or how this all shook out, and even I've heard stuff from when I left originally and went to the Indies and did all that traveling. I had heard that, and people were talking about that and saying different. A guy said some stuff that I was talking about the Michigan Wrestling Organization when I left the first time, and saying negative things about it. which isn't true. And I'm like, wait, where did that come from? It was mind boggling.
Right.
I didn't understand it. There's a lot of rumor. There's a lot of speculation. There's a lot of people that weren't involved that are thinking certain things or imagining certain things or acting like they have the in on this situation. And all this time, I've been sitting back, working out of state and doing what I've got to do and sitting at home. I have not once had a situation where I'm actually able to either dispel the rumors, say, yeah, that's true, yeah, that's false, defend myself in any way. It's just been a lot of speculation and people saying things and assuming things, and it's not okay. I don't feel like I'm being given a fair shake here. And even the guys involved in this situation, I don't think we have had that conversation. We haven't. They think certain things went on that didn't go on. And I want to dispel all of that and kind of put my cards out on the table and just say, look, this is what went on. This is what happened. This is why I was upset. This is, how I reacted and how I should be doing better and should have done better. And this is the truth. They always hear there's the right side and the left side, and then there's somewhere in the middle, there's the truth. And I'm sure that this is going to be a little more eye-opening to some folks. And I feel like this is, could, and I'm hoping, my hope here is that this triggers some degree of conversation. I have an open door policy. That's anytime anybody wants to talk to me about this stuff, great, let's talk. Yeah, let's talk. Let's be adult here. 30-year-old Scott is not the same as 33-year-old Scott. I'm living a whole different life here. A whole different life. I think back then, 3 years ago, I was not well equipped emotionally to handle a lot of the things that were going on backstage. It just wasn't. I had a lot going on in my personal life. It's not an excuse, but it was. But it was what was going on. Emotionally, I was not well equipped to handle these situations effectively. And
that was going to be my point in all of this is, I had alluded earlier to the fact that the Scott that I'm talking to now is not the same Scott I was dealing with in 2018 because, and it's only a couple of years, but we all know, anybody that's watching this knows how much can change over the course of such a brief amount of time.
Yep.
You look at this year, we are in September of this year, and February seems like a lifetime ago.
It does.
With everything that's happened with COVID and, just everything from February to this point, it seems like we're in a completely different world. Now, as far as your departure, your last departure in 2018, let me give you my point of view. Now, let me start off by saying is I didn't realize how many multiple layers of issues that was truly going on until after the fact. And
Right.
That's on me because I should have been more attentive to what was really happening. But you can also understand to some degree that when you have a roster of 30 plus,
Yeah.
and you're kind of spread all over the place in every aspect of running the business,
Right.
especially on show day. Oh my God, the microphones aren't working. Well, let me stop what the fuck I'm doing to go fix the the microphones, right?
Right.
So that's on me, and I should have been more attentive to those situations. I should have been more forceful to get to the bottom of this so it didn't escalate to the point that it got. So I will take that hit. my biggest issue with you on a professional level first, and then it kind of bled into the personal level because we had developed a real life, a respect, a friendship. I mean, the wrestling boots that I wear to this day, you and Verdi got for me.
Yeah.
And to this day, even after the fact, my left one is Verdi and my right one is Scott. Yes, I named my wrestling boots.
Yeah.
But so this is the way that I saw it. I didn't realize that you had left the company until I had seen a Facebook post. I did not realize that things had escalated to the point to where you just said screw it and walked away. Now, based on what you had just laid out, in some aspects, I can understand why you went that route. I can. I feel bad that my inattentiveness to the situation made you feel like you had no other alternative.
Well,
but it wasn't until I had seen a post of your upcoming dates, and on one of those dates was the Christmas show that you and I were to have our blow off on.
mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, he's done here, because we had dates all already mapped out, and they weren't on your schedule. That's how I put two and two together. And I was like, okay, you go through a range of emotions when you see something like that. I was like, wow, he didn't have enough respect for me to tell me he didn't want to do this anymore. That was my first reaction.
Mm.
But at no point, Scott, did I ever stand in front of the roster and said, Scott Ryan is a no good son of a bitch, and here's why. That did not happen.
Right.
Whenever I have a personal conflict with somebody, more often than not, I keep that inside. I keep that to myself because I don't want what I'm dealing with to influence what other people think or how they feel about somebody else. That's not my business to tell you why you shouldn't like this person.
Right.
It's just, our because of our dynamic, I felt disrespected.
Mm-hmm.
I felt hurt. My heart was broken in some respects. And then, and this is the part that followed it, and I didn't go online to find out. I didn't do any research. I heard these things. Oh, Scott said this about you in the company, and Scott said that about you in the company. If that, and this was my honest to God, reaction. If that's what's happening, and that's what he's saying, that's on him. I am not going to give you anything back that you can. Well, Scott said this, and then Jason said that, and I'm not feeding into that bullshit.
Right.
But that's how I felt about things, to the point to where it became official because we were no longer Facebook friends. That's when that shit's real, right? So I was like, okay, let him do him. I'm nothing that I'm going to do and say at this point is going to change what's happening right now. So I essentially, when everything went down, I essentially closed that door for right now. And my focus was to move forward.
So this situation, this initial thing, that was the initial thing that had occurred. The situation with Cody. Now it escalated further. I wasn't booked for a show. I wasn't booked. And I, I'm standing there. I'm the current Great Lakes champion. Like, how am I not booked? Like, what is going on? I'm in a hot feud with Bam Grizzly, and then I kind of put two and two together. And you didn't tell me it was a suspension, for this Cody situation. And to be honest, I knew what it was. I did my little investigative work and said, okay, it's a suspension. I know what this is. I think the expectation of me when I was off that show was that, well, he's an indie guy. And that seems to be a mentality that goes on. Well, that's an indie guy, and up at MWO. Oh, this indie guy, Well, indie guy showed up, and indie guy ran sound that day. And I put my happy face on. I drove an hour and a half. I set up the ring. I took it down. I set up the sound booth with Laura, and I ran sound that day quietly. And I ate that suspension. I knew what it was, but I ate it. And I thought a lot of people, and a lot of the guys backstage, I guess, were expecting me to not show. And indie guy will not show up. Mr. Indie guy will stay at home because he's not booked. I didn't. I wanted to show my worth in that situation, and I later explained to you that I knew it was a suspension. I knew it was a suspension. And you didn't tell me, but I knew it was. And that's where some of my animosity toward Cody comes from, because I thought that was almost shady in a way. It was like, is that what's going to happen now? Guys are going to get upset and they're going to stomp into Jason's office. Oh, I'm on the booking committee and you're going to do this. And if you don't do this, then I'm going to, leave and whatever. And I didn't think it was very fair. And I had that, I held on to that, but I was really proud of the way I conducted myself that day, just showing up, shutting my mouth and running sound. And that's, honest to God, that was one of my more proud moments ever in my professional career, ever, because I just shut my mouth and did it. And it was like, the ultimate way of I guess you could say, I'll show you. I showed up and I did what I had to do. So the Cody situation, it never fully, in my opinion, got really resolved. I never got to have that real conversation with Cody about why and what the issue is. I never got to really have that real face-to-face interaction with him on that level. And it bugs me, not just because of, I don't think the situation is right, because I respected the hell out of Cody. I did. I respected the hell out of that guy. We were good friends when I was there the first time. And we were when I came back, I watched his match. He had that great WrestleRama match with I think it was Jack Price in the Bertrand Expo Center. Great match. And I had seen this guy when I first came to the MWO. I took him on, and I remember being like, this guy needs a lot of work. And then years later, I come back and I'm watching him have this match where him and Jack Price are tearing the house down. And I'm like, wow, man, Cody is 20 times better than he was before. This guy's doing great. And he came backstage, and man, I was, I told him, man, it was a great match. You're doing way better. I love what you're doing. You look 10 times better than you did before. This is great. You're killing it. And I always respected Cody. I always respected his stance from a personal standpoint, and the things that were happening in his personal life. And I always talked to him about those, and I made it clear to him during those times that he has my support. And when a lot of guys were saying some not so nice things about him, I felt like I had always had his back. So when this hit the fan, it bugged me, a lot, because I respected Cody a lot right up until that point. And it was like, what the heck is going on? And that's where I was like, okay, well, this is how it's going to be. I mean, even when he got cut open hard way, I remember, I think he dinged his head off the post or whatever the case may be. It was the first guy there when he came through the curtain to make sure that he was okay. I was, You know, I was the first guy. I was the guy out there cleaning up the blood on his forehead and, you know, cleaning up that cut and making sure he was all right. Because at that time, I looked at him, he's like, he was my friend, you know. So that situation, to this day, it bugs me, because I it was a guy I respected so much, and a guy that I looked at like one of my friends and brothers in the business, and, you know, in the pro wrestling fraternity, and that's just how I looked at it. So that bothers me, and now, so after that, things kind of quieted down for a little bit. If you remember, we everybody kind of stopped talking to each other, I guess, but things kind of quieted down a bit, and then we had this situation where the name thing comes in. I had received a message from a well-known trainer and promoter in the state. He messaged me and said that there was a guy that came to him and used my name as his trainer. And in no way, shape, or form am I considered. It's really tough, especially in the state of Michigan. It's really tough to be looked at as I guess you could say, credible trainer. You know, I mean, Truth Martini, for example, nobody's on his level. You know, not even close. You know, so I mean, to be looked at as a credible trainer in the state of Michigan, it takes a lot. It takes a lot of years of experience, a lot of years of being out there on the indies. You got to know everybody, and you know, Levi is a credible trainer. He's been doing this for such a long time. He's considered a credible trainer. You know, stuff like that. You have to be around this business for almost 20 plus years, you know, for people to start looking at you and going, yeah, that guy could train people. You know, and but I had been in this business for, at that time, it was 11 years. And this kid, Caesar Asher, I guess, went out to another trainer and a guy that was booking shows, and told him that I was his trainer. And that guy messaged me and said, hey, this guy's using your name. And I said, no, he's not my guy. You know, I had to, but I also had to put the kibosh on it, on the page. Now, I went on the MWO Facebook page and I said, hey, look, guys, you can't be doing that. You know, you can't. And there is, in the MWO, there is a lot of anti-indie sentiment among the boys. And a lot of that anti-indie sentiment gets riled up by John Campbell. John has a really hard vendetta against the indies throughout the entire world, you know, in the country. He has a problem with the indies, and he doesn't like it. And so John looked at it like, well, these indie guys are stopping, are stirring up crap, and these indie guys are causing trouble, and this is that indie Scotty Fraytown, because I had recently just gotten back out onto the Michigan indie scene. Oh, they're getting him riled up, and it was, no, I just, you can't just run around using my name without permission. That's basically what it came down to. And I had a meeting before the show, the next show, with all the boys. And I had stood in front of all the boys and told them, look, guys, this is how this works. You can't run around just dropping people's names like that without permission. You just can't. And one person that was conspicuously absent from that meeting was Caesar Asher. In the meantime, in that meeting, we have, and John to his credit, the guy, and this is not a knock on him, the man needs to go into politics. Honestly, he needs to get, because that guy could sell a ketchup sandwich to a man with white gloves. I swear, the guy can talk. He knows how to get everybody riled up and walk into the rhythm, man. And he's good at that. He really should look into a job in politics or something, because I mean, the guy he can talk. And during that meeting, John kind of stood up, and it stopped being about, you can't use somebody's name, into John, you know, basically getting everybody riled up and, getting their pitchforks and torches and screw the Michigan Indies and screw the Indies scene in general and da 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 da. And that's what it turned into. And so I was like, okay, well, that didn't go quite like I had hoped, but I think everybody understands. And later that day, so we do the show, and later that day on our MWO roster page, Caesar goes on there, makes a live video, and is slamming me. Like, I'm just a huge, D-bag, and I'm being an asshole to him or something. And I wasn't being an asshole to him. I was going to have my meeting with all the boys, and that was that. I was going to talk to him and be on our way. And Caesar went on that video and started slamming me. He quit the MWO that day, and he was slamming me like it was nobody's business. And I was like, man, like this could have been settled really easily if he had just shown up, sat down in the meeting, talked to me after the meeting, and been done. And so I talked to Levi, and I said, what do I do? I didn't know what I should do in this situation. I never had this happen. So I had chatted with Levi. I called him, and he said, Scott, he said, he's running around on the Indies dropping your name. He said, he's running around, you're trying to get out there a little more, and you're trying to get booked, and now you got this guy running around. He's not trained by you, and he's dropping your name, and if he screws something up, that on you. He goes, so you need to make it clear that this isn't your guy. And I said, okay, so what do you suggest? He said, I would blackball him just to make it clear. And so I had chatted with you and your brother at that time. We were in the office, and I said, I've been talking to Levi, and I'm talking about blackballing this guy, but I don't want to stir any trouble. So what do you do? What do I do? And you had said, well, he doesn't work here anymore. Ball's in your court. You do what you want. He's not here anymore. He said, I don't know what to tell you. I said, okay. And you didn't encourage it or anything. You said, look, I'm wiping my hands clean of this one, So
because he had already quit the company,
right?
Which again, I was a privy to before I had seen the live video that you were talking to. So
right.
I washed my hands of it was probably as good of a way to say it as anything, I suppose.
Right. And so I said, okay. And I went over to Levi's house after the show, and we sat down and we talked a little more. And he said, Scott, I would do this just to point out that this isn't your guy and to make it clear. Okay. And apparently he had gone to not just the promoter that messaged me, but there was another one that he had gone to as well. So I opted to do the blackball on Caesar, basically meaning that promoters won't book him if he shows up there. This isn't a trained guy. Don't use him, whatever the case. And a lot of the boys took exception to that, and they thought I was kind of attacking their boy, and it was unwarranted. And I, no matter how I explained myself or how much I explained myself, nobody cared. It was just like, no, and a lot of that comes from John and the anti-indie thing. You attack Caesar, and I got messages from all these guys, oh, you're a big dirtball, and I went on the roster page, and it turned into it was like the Comedy Central roast of Scotty Fraytown on there. It was like, what? Come on, guys. So I opted to leave. I said, okay, I'm going to leave. I'm just to hell with it. At this point, John treats me like I'm a dirtball. Cody treats me like I'm a dirtball. Bill and Todd treat me like I'm a dirtball. Like I keep showing up, and I keep putting my best foot forward and trying my hardest to further myself and further my wrestling career and do what I'm doing. And everybody's treating me like I'm a big jerk. I don't think I'm a big jerk, and nobody cared. So I opted to leave, and I had posted a video saying that I was leaving. And you called me, and you said, look, why don't you come up for the show? We'll see how it goes, and we'll go from there. And I said, okay. And I came up, and that was the last match I'd had at MWO, was that tag team match we had of you and me versus JJ Hughes and Roberto Cruz. And we had this match, and we got done. And I went backstage, and I was standing backstage, and nobody realized that I was standing there, and I was getting geared up. And about 6 feet away from me stood Jacob Braun, John Campbell, and a handful of other guys kind of congregated. And they didn't realize I was standing there getting geared down. And I was minding my business, doing my thing. And they were saying some pretty, really awful things about me as a person. And I'm just minding my own business, just gearing down after a show. And I look over, and these guys are going on and on. Now, and that was the point where I had opted to leave. That was the moment, because it was like I was standing there getting geared down, and these guys are still bashing me about this Caesar situation. And I get it that everything was kind of fresh, but John is a guy that you know, a lot of guys look to as a locker room leader. He's a guy that people that in most times John he can be a really professional guy, and the guy preaches professionalism, and it was just not professional. I stood backstage, and I listened to people that I thought were my friends, or people that I thought were my professional colleagues, just slamming me. And it's like, why am I putting myself in this situation? You know, I come up here, and I love wrestling, but I mean, am I gonna sacrifice my dignity to get made fun of and have awful things said about me, and to get into a ring with these guys? You know, and at the same time, it became a question of how can I trust these guys, you know, to keep me safe. I'm going to a ring, I'm putting my body in their hands.
Right.
And that became the moment. And to this day, I don't think John recognizes that I was standing there, and I heard everything that he was saying about me, and him and Braun and all those guys were saying about me. And it was like, wow, that's pretty terrible. And so when I had left, I didn't put the dates out there, and I apologize for not contacting you as a friend, as an adult, as a professional. It wasn't right. One thing that I can say is that, you know, like, so after I did, and you were understandably bothered because we were such good friends, and I didn't handle that well. And the video came out on the roster page. I was removed from the roster page, and then I got to see it. I still have 5 friends that work up there for you. So they were all on the roster page, and all 5 of them, you know, I mean, these are guys that 5 of them were standing in my wedding a couple weeks ago. I mean, of course I'm going to hear about the video that comes out about me leaving the company. And there were some comments that were made by other wrestlers on that video. Some of the guys, and guys that weren't actually completely involved, guys like Rick Crow, who weren't directly involved in the situation, making comments like, oh, well, maybe things will run smoother now. It's like, was that really? And I took exception to the video that you had posted on that roster page, because my understanding was that there were some kind of, I guess, little jabs taken at me. And I was like, what? And so I had messaged you about it, and you know, you kind of dispelled it from there. The moment that I stopped talking to you was, and I'm not going to get into the full situation, because that's just messy. But there was a certain guy that was not doing things that are acceptable in the world today, and former roster member. And I messaged you about it, and I said, if it was me, and I was running a company like that, I would do anything and everything to distance myself from that person. And a video came out on the roster page that said, I'm not going to let anybody, any roster member, current or past, tell me how I'm going to run my company. And I wasn't going to tell you how you run your company. That was me, because I still looked at you as my friend. I was looking out for my friend. That's all it was. It was me looking out for somebody that I cared about, and that was me. I still held a sense of loyalty to you, and that's where I messaged you about it. And when that video came out, I was like, okay, like, this is the second time a video's come out where I've supposedly been slammed on. I'm out. And that's where I took off. Now, after that, I cut a promo while I was working for Detroit Style Wrestling, which is now defunct. But when I was working for them, I had made and I'm going to own this because I was still salty toward John and everybody. I went on a promo and I proceeded to call IWE, and I quote, a shitbox clown show, because I was, pissed off at John and everybody for this whole situation. I own that. And John, I'm sure that I hope that you'll watch the whole thing. I do. Because I apologize for that, John. So I where was I here? Oh, so I left. I had cut that promo, and I own that. I can own that. It wasn't professional. It wasn't acceptable. It was rude. And not only do I apologize to John here, but I apologize to Dennis and the guys that work there, because a lot of them have put in a lot of hard work in that promotion. I know a lot of those guys worked hard. And John runs a hell of a promotion up there. He does. He runs a hell of a promotion. He's got a nice building there. He's got a nice ring up there. He draws a lot of fans. He does a lot of good PR and good with the fan. He's good with the people, and I mean, they love that show up there. Right. They really. They do a great job. They have good production value. The place looks great, and he should be proud of that. And I understand, obviously, why he would be angry about that, and I don't blame him. I don't blame the guy. I tried to have a conversation with John not too long ago. He wasn't willing to talk about it. Wasn't willing to have that conversation. I'm hoping this opens the door in some way, shape, or form for that conversation to take. I really am. So we can talk as adults and get it hashed out. Finally, enough of the he said, she said, enough of the hearsay, enough of the telephone, tell a friend, tell a wrestler, enough of it. Let's get in a room. Let's sit down. Let's get face to face. Let's get down in the nitty gritty, whether it be me and John or me and Cody or whoever. And to the credit of some of the guys in this situation, they have been willing to talk, and they haven't subscribed to the rumor and innuendo. They haven't subscribed to the things that certain folks have said. JJ Hughes was a total class act. Roberto Cruz, total class act. Bill Sackman, total class act. All three of us, we said our sorries, said we'd love to work together again. And that was that. We talked about it and we dealt with it.
So as we're nearing the end of this episode, Scott, what is your ultimate end game? What would you like to see?
My ultimate end game here is to see the stuff get squashed. That's the ultimate end game. Screw wrestling. Let's talk about personal relationships and personal friendships and professional relationships and professional friendships. Let's talk about that. Let's clear the air. even if I, it could be years down the line before I even come back to the Michigan Wrestling Organization. Would I love to come back? Absolutely. I didn't want to leave in the first place. I didn't want to leave. If anybody thinks I wanted to leave, I didn't want to leave. I was having some of the best times up there. I was having some of the best matches of my career up there. I was putting in some of the best work and the best effort, and it was something that I really believed in. I didn't want to leave. Never did. I felt like it was time because of what went on. As far as the MWO goes, though, would I love to come back? Sure. Absolutely. But is it what my main concern is? No. My main concern is squashing heat because I'm 33 years old. I have 2 kids. And if I'm going to sit here and be angry at people about ridiculous stuff, what type of example am I setting for my kids? How do I look at as a person by sitting there holding a 2-year grudge? Okay, we're over 2 years now. What kind of person am I right now holding a 2-year grudge? It doesn't make any sense over this business. This business, like I said earlier, it's 2 guys that go out and play fight in their underwear.
Right?
Is it worth it? These guys were my friends. I lost a lot of friends in this situation. That sucks. That's fucking miserable. And I want it to be squashed. I want to be able to sit down with these people and talk and hash it out. And if they want to work with me in the future, great. That's my first thing before wrestling. Before wrestling is even thought about, that's item number 1. Once we get past that, maybe we can get back to doing what we love to do. And that's go out and put on a show for the fans and have a good time. But we've got to get past the bullshit first. That's step 1. That's thing number 1. And I would love to be able to get back. I can't take back what's in the past, but what I can do is focus on the future and focus what I'm doing, and I can own the things that I did in the past, and I can apologize for them, and I can try and make amends, and that's what I'm trying to do to the best of my ability. And I've tried to have conversations with some of these guys. One guy told me, I want you to eat, just not at my table. And he wasn't willing to have a conversation about anything. Rumors flew. And some of them aren't true. Most of them aren't true. Most of the rumors. Nobody understood my side of things. I don't think anybody got that perspective. It's real easy when you're not hanging around one guy and you're hanging around another guy every 2 weeks or every week or every 3 weeks or however often shows take place, because I know dates spread out sometimes or they get closer. Sometimes you have 2 weeks on or whatever. So you're hanging out with these people for 2 years and you haven't seen me for 2 years. And you hear all these things being said, and I don't think anybody thought to call or message or, hey, Scott, I'm an open door. I have an open door policy. I'm an open book. I come on, let's talk about it. Let's hash it out. I'd rather not feel like there's all this animosity out in the world toward me over something that could have been handled by 2 human beings talking. That simple. It's communication. Just seems silly at this point.
Well, let me say, from my personal perspective, certain ways that I handle things, a lot of times it was in the heat of the moment, not thinking things clearly through before, it's one of those things, open mouth, insert foot. So, by no stretch of the imagination, have I been perfect in any of this? So for that, I apologize to you. From a personal and sometimes a professional, standpoint in the way that I look at things. So I apologize for that. I know this wasn't easy for you.
No.
I coming on here and I'll, I don't even know if you're aware of this, but this whole thing, we had talked a couple of months ago, I guess it was, about doing something similar to this.
Right.
You had sent me a random message. Is what is the concept of close to the heart? And I gave you my answer, and you just kind of threw an idea out there. Last week or a week before last, one of your what's the word? One of your champions, somebody who is champion for you, contacted me.
Yeah.
And said, and I'm not going to go into the specifics of the conversation. What I will say is, I think it would do Scott a lot of good if he had an avenue to speak his mind. And I sat on it for a couple of days, kind of thought about it, and that's when I shot you the message and said, "Do you want to do this?" And I'm glad that we had this opportunity to sit down, even though it's in a virtual circumstance, looking at cameras. But that's the world that we're in right now. But it was, number one, it was good to see you.
It was good to see
you. Sit down and actually be able to see you. But
missed you at the wedding. Man, it was like, oh, I was hoping Jason was gonna be here. I was like, yeah, he's got some family stuff going on. So
I'm sorry. I mean, I had every intention of being there, but as you've seen, life happens here, and it happens without schedule. So, but that as well as anybody. But I appreciate you taking time to sit down, and I know again this was not easy. So it's very admirable that you put yourself out there in the way that you have, and I hope, fundamentally, if nothing else, for your sake in particular, that this does kind of open up doors of conversation.
Right.
And hopefully, with time, with patience, that you can get past all of this and kind of begin a new chapter in however way that's going to work out, whether it's in a wrestling environment or not, just to get that weight off your shoulders. And right. I can understand wholeheartedly how important that is, but it starts with the purest of intentions. And I believe, sitting here watching you and listening to you, I believe at this point in your life these are the purest of your intentions.
Absolutely. That's where it's at. I'm too tired to have heat. I'm too tired. I'm too tired. I just, and I got to set, and then I'm setting, this is also me setting an example for my kids, because my kids are no stranger to your shows and to the guys up there. And my oldest, he hears things and he sees things and he notices things. Oh, why aren't we going there anymore? Why aren't we with these guys?
Right.
And what am I supposed to say? How am I supposed to explain these adult situations to my 9-year-old? We need to have these conversations, and this is me setting example for my kids, and it's me getting out there and really just squashing everything. All wrestling aside, I'd love to be an MWO ring again, but all wrestling aside, it's like, this has weighed on me for a long time. It really has. It's really weighed on me for the last 2.5 years. And I just, and I tried to apologize to some folks, via messages, because obviously we had things going on with the pandemic and so on and so forth. And some it went really well and others it didn't. And I have no right to tell people that they're allowed to be, they're not allowed to be angry, or they're not allowed to be upset. And I'm not going to stand there and point the finger at people and say, well, you're a dirtball because you did this, and that's the only reason I did this, because it doesn't justify me doing things that I did. It doesn't.
Right.
No matter how you slice it. It doesn't justify me acting unprofessionally and acting nasty and rude and whatever the case. It doesn't, I can't sit there and justify that. Two wrongs don't make a right. Whether or not I'm upset about something else, I can tell you what I can do differently and what I should have done differently and how I can handle things differently. Sometimes it takes a little bit of that self-reflection and looking back, hindsight 2020, into saying, could have done that a little easier or a little better. You could have had that conversation with somebody. And I that's where I was lacking. You know, that's where I was lacking, is actually sitting down with people and you know, I've got a different perspective on life these days, I guess. I'm married, got a new house, new job, new life, you know, and it's like, wow, maybe I should just handle this. Maybe I should just look in the mirror for a second. I'm much more positive about life. I'm much more happy in life. And back then I wasn't, and it showed.
Right.
So, and unfortunately, some people got to experience that degree of negativity that came from me. So I think I have a whole different approach, and I'm hoping that people are willing to accept that approach.
All right. I can't think of a better way to end this episode than on that note right there. That pretty much sums it up. We've been sitting here for over an hour and a half now. The editing process is going to be fun, especially with the the distractions, as it were, the hiccups. So, Scott, thanks, brother.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to join the show here. I think this is going. I think some good is going to come out of this, and that's a lot of what this show is about. I mean, this will be a completely different kind of topic than what we've tackled before, but I think it's going to resonate with some. Hopefully all, but at least with some.
Right.
So, you know, hopefully it does some good. And for the rest of you who are watching this, we certainly appreciate you taking time out of your day to watch the show. And if you're digging what we're doing, hit the subscribe button on YouTube. And don't forget to check out the Close to the Heart podcast exclusively on the Anchor.fm app or on Spotify. A new episode drops every Tuesday morning at midnight. For Scott Ryan, I am Jason Klaus. We certainly appreciate your time, and we'll see you next time right here on Close to the Heart.